During the Second World War, Japan was allied with Nazi Germany, battling against the entire Europe for world domination. The war affected every aspect of the people's lifestyle. When the bombers from the enemy nation arrived, everyone hid in shelters to avoid being bombarded to death. Everyone was afraid for their lives at all times. One such day, when the bombers arrived, Seita, a young Japanese boy who lived with his mother and sister, quickly buried his household valuables in the ground. He then tied his sister, Setsuko, around himself and bid his mother farewell. They were already late, so she asked them to hurry up as she left. Children and adults had different shelters, so they headed in different directions. Seita grabbed his father's picture before they headed out. As they stepped outside, the skies filled with missiles. The brother and sister hid back in their house, but it wasn't safe to stay there. They rushed outside again after a while, only to find the entire community burning. The missiles continued to fall from the sky as the enemy air force commanded the skies. This time, the devastation was unlike anything the brother and sister had ever seen, so they quickly rushed off to a safer place. Seita carried Setsuko to a nearby beach, where they took shelter until the enemy pilots left. Soon, rain started falling, mixed with smoke and dust from the sky. The black rain, a common occurrence during war. After a while, Setsuko started asking about her mother. Seita assured her that everything would be all right, as she was in the shelter, which could withstand even a 250-kilogram bomb. Then, they decided to head towards the Twin Pines where their mother had asked them to meet her. But they soon realized that the entire town had been devastated by the bombings. All the houses were burned down, and the only building still standing was the public hall. The streets were filled with burnt-down houses and corpses. Rubble covered the entire neighborhood. The injured were being rescued, and the dead were being identified. Since all their houses had burned down, the survivors gathered along the streets. Soon, a person announced that everyone requiring first aid must head to the elementary school where a camp had been built. Seita and Setsuko headed to the first aid camp, and the sister got her eyes checked. Just then, one of their neighbors came rushing. She told Seita that his mother was injured, so he must go meet her in the medpost building. Seita rushed there, leaving his sister behind with the neighbor. In the medpost, the medic in charge of the whole building handed Seita his mother's ring. He then guided Seita to his mother, who was heavily injured and had suffered many serious burn injuries. Seita had no words. He only asks if he can get some medicine for his mother's bad heart. He returns to his sister but doesn't tell her anything. He simply puts the ring inside her purse and asks that she never lose it. Setsuko starts throwing a tantrum to see her mother, but Seita tells her that it's too late today and they'll meet her tomorrow. The very next day, their mother succumbs to her injuries and passes away. She isn't even given a proper funeral and is simply put into a pit alongside hundreds of other bodies and burned. The brother and sister are then taken in by distant relatives living in the Nishinomiya district. Seita still cannot find the strength to tell his sister about their mother, so he doesn't tell her anything. He hands her a box of flavored candies to keep her distracted. The next day, Seita goes to his hometown to get back the valuables he had buried. He had actually stored up various cuisines and food items in store for when the situation was unfavorable for them. Since they were now staying with their relatives, he gives all of these cuisines to them. He then tells his aunt that his mother died a few days ago in the medical post. He hadn't told her earlier, because he didn't want Setsuko to know. His aunt asks him to collect his father as soon as possible. The days start to pass, and soon it appears that the aunt gets tired of having extra mouths to feed. She keeps pestering Seita to write to his father, even though he hasn't replied to his last letter. Even during dinner, the aunt starts to discriminate between them and her daughter. She doesn't even give them proper food, and fills their bowls with soup rather than rice. During the nighttime, the brother and sister go outside and enjoy the sight of hundreds of fireflies flying, just like the thousands of missiles that fill up the sky every other day. One day, the sirens are heard again, and all of them rush to a nearby bomb shelter. Setsuko feels uneasy and sick in the shelter, but they manage to stay the night. The next day, they visit the beach nearby, and the siblings enjoy a good swim. Seita notices rashes on Setsuko's back and uses the salt water to clean them. Their laughter fills the sky, and Seita remembers the days when life was better, back when their mother was alive, and they didn't have to worry about food at all. There would always be food and drinks to spare, and life was good. He's brought back to reality by the warning sirens again. One day, their aunt tells them to sell their mother's kimono for about 15 kilograms of rice, because they need to eat healthily. Setsuko is against it, but Seita allows her to go ahead with it. The aunt then takes half of their rice and gives them half of it. However, she still doesn't allow them to have a proper meal. While her husband and daughter take rice balls for lunch, she forces them to have poorly cooked porridge. She accuses them of being freeloaders and tells them that if they don't like it here, they should just go to Tokyo to their other relatives. Disheartened, the siblings head to Tokyo next. They are hungry and have no idea where the so-called relatives are. However, Seita manages to get a hold of the 7,000 yen left by their mother before she died from the bank. With the money, they return back, and Seita purchases a stove, some utensils, a comb for Setsuko, and a makeshift umbrella from a farmer. After many weeks, they're able to have a separate cooking space from their aunt, and can fill their bellies with their own food. The war shows no sign of stopping, and the rations supplied by the government get scarcer and scarcer every month. The sweet box that Seita gave Setsuko also starts emptying, so he fills it up with water to make sweet water for his sister. The days start getting worse, but the siblings enjoy every moment they have with each other. One night, Setsuko has a bad dream, and she starts crying, so Seita takes her outside to see the Fireflies again. But as they are outside, the warning sirens go off, and they're forced to take shelter under a mine alongside the lake. There, they think long and hard about their lives with their aunt, who constantly troubles them, accuses them of being bad, and treats them as if they're some kind of animals. Seita knows that their aunt doesn't want them to be there, and Setsuko hates living with her aunt. He decides that they'll leave and come stay here in the abandoned mines. So the next day, they bring all their stuff and gleefully bid goodbye to their aunt. The siblings decorate the place and even add their beds inside the mines. They go back to the same farmer from before and buy some more food supplies. A few days go by and soon their food starts running out and they resort to hunting the frogs in the lake. That night, Setsuko can't sleep. Because she's scared of the dark, Seita lets in a lot of fireflies inside their mosquito net. They light up the place, and the siblings watch them in awe. Seita then tells Setsuko that everything will be fine when their father comes back. He's currently in the Japanese Navy, fighting for his country. Seita has no doubt that Japan will win the war, and soon they will reunite with their father. The night passes by with hope. The next day, Seita notices Setsuko preparing a grave for the fireflies they had captured yesterday. She tells him that she knows their mother is also in a grave. Their aunt had told her. Seita cannot control his tears. The little girl had held on to so much grief. He can't forgive himself for not being able to stop it from happening. Seita then sits down beside her and tells her exactly where their mother is resting. Setsuko asks him, why do fireflies have to die so soon? A question that no one can probably answer. Their supplies have started to run out, so Seita goes back to the farmer who sold him food. But this time, the farmer tells him that he has nothing left to sell. All the farmer can give him are a few words of encouragement to never give up, but words don't fill bellies. On their way back, an enemy aircraft forces them to dive into a field of tomatoes, and the two hungry siblings eat their fill. They also carry as much food as they can from the field. After another night of heavy black rain, the siblings spend their day outside drying up. They look famished and sickly. Setsuko's whole body is covered with rashes, and her hair is filled with lice. She tells her brother that her stomach hasn't been well for many days, and the diarrhea won't go away. Worried for his sister's health, Seita plans to steal some sugarcane from the same field they stumbled upon yesterday. He goes there at night but is caught by the owner. Seita begs, saying it's for his sick sister, but the man doesn't care. Stealing crops during wartime is a heinous crime. He beats up Seita brutally and drags him to his home, where he finds the other stolen crops from the day before. With all this evidence, he takes the boy to the police station. Standing outside amidst the fireflies, little Setsuko can do nothing, but she cries out her brother's name as he's taken away. Thankfully, the officer is a kind man who doesn't hurt him. He scolds the man for hitting a young boy like that, scares the man off, and lets Seita go. Outside, Setsuko is waiting for him. She rushes to hug him. Seita again cannot control his tears. He's failed to help his sister, even when Setsuko is so sickly. She asks Seita to go to the hospital if he's badly hurt, which makes the boy even sadder. He feels they have no one but themselves in the world. He hugs his sister and carries her back to their home. From the next day, when the enemies come, instead of hiding in the shelter, Seita starts stealing food and goods from other people's houses. When the missiles fall from the sky, he doesn't cower. He thanks them for giving him what he needs. One day, he returns from trying to sell stolen kimonos and finds his sister passed out in the fields nearby. He quickly takes her to the hospital. She's so thin that her skin has met her ribs, and rashes cover all of her body. The doctor tells Seita that it's malnutrition, and she needs good food to get healthier. Seita wants the doctor to give her a shot, but there's no shot for malnutrition. Their money and resources have started to run out, and Seita can't do anything to give his sister better food. When they return, he sees a man cutting ice, and remembers Setsuko wanting ice cream. Under the man's cart, he finds chunks of ice that have fallen, and he feeds her, telling her it's ice cream. Seita decides to go back to the bank to retrieve whatever they have left. He leaves Setsuko with some food, and goes to Tokyo. While in line for the bank, he hears some men talking about the war being over. Japan had lost after a full surrender. All their ships had been sunk, and all their planes had been shot down. Seita cannot believe it. This meant that his father, too, had been killed. He tries to calm himself and returns to his sister. He comes back with rice, chicken, eggs, and some watermelons. By now, Setsuko is only partially conscious of what's happening. She's been passing out on a regular basis due to the lack of food. That night, A massive typhoon overtakes the whole area. The sound of thunder wakes Seita up. He sees that his sister is no more. She lies there, lifeless, beside him. He doesn't cry, and simply hugs her the whole night. The next day, he uses the remaining money to buy proper funeral items, and takes proper instruction from a local man about the funeral. The weather is great that day. There are no enemy aircraft in the skies, no dust and fire in the streets, and after a long while, laughter can be heard around the community. Seita walks to the top of a lonely hill and places his sister in the coffin he bought. He remembers the fond memories they had, her laughter, and her love for him. He then cremates the body and sits alongside it until night falls, and the Fireflies are back again. He places Setsuko's ashes in the candy box and never went back to the mine again. September 21st, 1945, on a street filled with people, an orphan like many others around him passes away from hunger or from the lack of hope. It's Seita. His soul watches his lifeless body, but he's happy because he can finally reunite with his sister. The siblings then reunite in a field full of fireflies. They take the train and visit all the important days of their lives. Fireflies are meant to be happy. Fireflies are meant to be fray. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on the notification bell and leave a like to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.